Hey, reader. Oh my goodness, kitty catsters. Hi, reader. You're the only one in my chat right now. How are you? Wait, what am I doing? This side's supposed to go back. Peace, saludos. Saludos. So, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. All right. So, yesterday when I did the little stories coming out of Los Angeles, I forgot to read out of the Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. It's a beautiful book. It's Jesus, or whatever higher power you may have, beckoning to you. So yesterday was the 14th. I'll read that one. And when I end my live in about 1 hour, because I have 2 hours left of free live stream, and I want to get through the book without all that glitching that I seem to get on YouTube Studio. So yesterday's was let me bless you with my grace and peace. Open your heart and mind to receive all that I have for you. Do not be ashamed of your emptiness. Instead, view it as the optimal condition for being filled with my peace. It is easy to touch up your outward appearance, to look as if you have it all together. Your attempts to look good can fool most people, but I see straight through you into the depths of your being. There is no place for pretense in your relationship with me. Rejoice in the relief of being fully understood. Talk with me about your struggles and feelings of inadequacy, Little by little, I will transform your weaknesses into strengths. Remember that your friendship with me is saturated in grace. Therefore, nothing that you do or don't do can separate you from my presence. You know, with all these fires and calamities in life and everything going on in the world today, we could use a little beckoning from God and prayer. So, yeah. Hi, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. I'm getting a late start. It's 10 here, 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 Midwestern, but that's okay. And we're not quite halfway through the book, but we're getting there. It's a little paperback. It's called Drinking. It's a New York Times bestseller. Drinking, a Love Story. Okay, by Carolyn Knapp. And I don't know, I started reading it around New Year's Eve, and I was like, wow, a lot of people struggle with drinking. I know I did. I don't anymore, but anybody can start again. Hi, Pink Peony. Hi. Thank you. I'm so happy you guys are here. So I'm on chapter 4, Hunger. And this is a book that is true, real. The names have just been changed. And it's really nice. It's a really good book. It's well written. And I'm going to start now. I'm going to try to get through this whole chapter. This is chapter 4. Her mom and dad died now. She's in her 30s, and she's going to AA, and she reflected in the last chapter on her household dynamics and things with her family, and how she didn't think she was that bad, but and this kind of thing with her alcoholism. And you guys, it was written in 1996. All right. So, Hunger. Around the time that Wiki died. Now, Wiki is her father's son from a previous marriage. And he died at 42 from a grand mal seizure. She really didn't like him very much because he was blind, and back then they used the words retarded, but very slow, and I mean, he couldn't help it or anything. But she later found out, after having these negative feelings about him and just wishing he wouldn't come by because it just caused a lot of strife and heartache and sadness for her then father when he was alive. When she was a teenager, I believe she was at that time, and her biological mother, because he would kind of like be at work and leave the boy, that this young man would need all this help from the biological mother, and she did the best she could, but it was hard. It was really sad when I read that he passed at such a young age. So around the time that Wiki died, I started taking those little quizzes about drug and alcohol abuse that you sometimes find in women's magazines or pamphlets at the doctor's office. And I started answering a lot of the questions positively. Do you find yourself having a drink or two before you go to a party where alcohol will be served? Okay, that was definite yes for me. Just to get yourself in the mood. She says yes. Do you find yourself gulping drinks? Check. Do you drink more when you're under stress? Sure. But some of the questions seemed a little obvious, even kind of stupid. Do you drink alone? Well, of course I drink alone. I live alone. What kind of question is that? She's thinking. The real questions, the questions I would have asked myself if I'd been willing to look more closely, might have been more pointed. Are you driven by a feeling of hunger and need? When someone sets a bottle of wine on the dinner table, do you find yourself glancing at it subversively, possessively, the way you might look at a lover you long for but don't quite trust? When someone pours you a glass from that bottle, do you take careful note of the level of liquid in the glass and measure it secretly against the level of liquid in the other glasses and hold your breath for just a second until you're assured you have enough? Do you establish an edgy feeling of relationship with that glass, that wine bottle? Do you worry over it, care about it, cover it, want all of it for yourself? Can you bear the thought that it might run out, that you'll be left sitting there without it, alone and unprotected? Oh, thank you. Thanks, Pink Peony. Thank you. In some ways, I felt that way about drinking from the very start, conscious and needful and aware. It always seemed pointless to me to pour a drink and not finish it, or to hold back if someone offered me another one. And although I couldn't articulate it, I remember being vaguely aware that I drank differently from the way other people did. I can't remember even turning down a drink, not even once. It would have been like a puppy turning down a proffered treat. Why not? Sure, I'll have another. Hi, Mary Jane Doe. Drinking is fun. It feels good. My mother didn't drink that way. Neither did my sister. They'd have a glass of wine at dinner, a single glass, and if you tried to pour more, they'd cover the glass with a hand and say, "No thanks, I've had enough." Enough? That's a foreign word to an alcoholic, absolutely unknown. There is never enough, no such thing. You're always after that insurance, always mindful of it, always so relieved to drink that first drink and feel the warming buzz in the back of your head, always so intent on maintaining the feeling, reinforcing the buzz, adding to it, not losing it. A woman I know named Liz calls alcoholism the disease of more, a reference to the greediness so many of us tend to feel around liquor, the grabbiness, the sense of impending deprivation, and the certainty that we'll never have enough. More is always better to an alcoholic. More is necessary. Why have 2 drinks if you can have 3? 3 if you can have 4? Why stop? Why and how? Toward the end of my drinking, I'd go to a party and promise Michael, this is her boyfriend at the time, I wouldn't drink too much. He'd plead, "Just take it easy, okay? Watch yourself." And I'd swear, "I won't. I don't want to get too drunk." I'd mean that, of course, and I'd start out by measuring myself. 1 glass of wine the first half hour, 1 glass the second, and so on. But then something would snap. Some uncontrollable process would kick in. And all of a sudden, it would be 2 or 3 hours later, and I'd be on my 6th or 10th or God knows what glass of wine, and I'd be plastered. I couldn't account for it, couldn't explain it, couldn't even rationalize it. Although I struggled mightily too, I seemed to get drunk, blind drunk, against my will. For you, Raider, it's pretty much used to function. Oh, hi, according to Leanie. Hi. Okay. The knowledge that some people can have enough while you never can is the single most compelling piece of evidence for a drinker to suggest that alcoholism is in fact a disease, that it has powerful physiological roots, that the alcoholic's body simply responds differently to liquor than a non-alcoholic's. Once I started to drink, I simply did not know how or when to stop. The feeling of need kicked in so pervasively that stopping didn't feel like an option. My friend Bill explains it this way to his mother, who has a hard time wrapping her mind around the disease concept of alcoholism and holds fast to the belief that he could have controlled his drinking if only he'd exerted enough will. He says, Mom, next time you have diarrhea, try controlling that. Crude, perhaps, but he gets the point across. So just now, you guys, the Dolly Uncensored came on, Turtle Island Season 5, Vote Your Favorite YouTuber. And I was thinking, right, or assuming it would be next week on Wednesday, a whole week later. But I did honestly think maybe it would be tonight. I think it was Tuesday night, right? And I had just said last night, if you want to call in and vote for me, that'd be really nice. I've gotten one vote so far. I wouldn't mind being on the island. Whether I'm allowed to be, I really don't know. But Jimmy accepted the vote from this Anna from Minnesota that, like I said in my one little live the other night, people thought that was me calling in. It absolutely wasn't. I wouldn't even lower myself to that. And yeah. So if people want to sit on the phone and see if they can get me on the island, that would be cool. Even if I get voted off the very, very first night, I don't care. So yeah. So that's on right now. It started a minute ago. So Raider says, I remember the older folks. Many are passed on now, but I seen many who had 2 beers with breakfast before work. That was normal. Wow. Y'all sit on that phone, LOL. Wow. Usually I was too hungover. I could not drink the next morning. I could not do what was that called with the tomato juice in the beer? There was a name for that too, that was supposed to like take care of the hair of the dog of the hangover or something. Boy. Okay, so the need is more merely physical. It's psychic and visceral and multi-layered. There's a dark fear to the feeling of wanting that wine, that vodka, that bourbon, a hungry, abiding fear of being without, being exposed without your armor. In meetings, you often hear people say that, by definition, an addict is someone who seeks physical solutions to emotional or spiritual problems. I suppose that's an intellectual way of describing that brand of fear and the instinctive response that accompanies it. There's a sense of deep need, and the response is a grabbiness, a compulsion to latch onto something outside yourself in order to assuage some deep discomfort. Hi, MTB or MTV. See, that's what it says, but you guys can see it in chat. We have my MTV. Okay, about 6 months after my father died, Michael's parents came up to visit from Connecticut, and the 4 of us went out to dinner. His parents don't drink much, so we ordered only 1 bottle of wine for the whole table, a single bottle, which poured out to about a glass and a half each. I remember feeling awkward in front of Michael's parents, whom I didn't know very well, and depressed about not having a father of my own, and generally apprehensive. Times like that fearful, grabby hunger would creep up on me in a way that felt so strong I couldn't concentrate on anything else. Crack an egg in a glass of beer. Ooh, ugh. Or 2 eggs and then chug. Whoa, really? Yikes. We sat and picked at an appetizer of tomatoes and fresh mozzarella. And Michael and his parents chatted idly about this and that, his sister and niece, a new car his parents had leased, and I felt so distracted by the hunger, so uncomfortable in my own skin, I thought I might explode. The feeling was unambiguous. Nothing is going to do the trick here except wine. Nothing is going to make me feel less awkward or less depressed or less anxious except more wine. Nothing. Could you excuse me for a minute? I stood up and said something about looking for the ladies' room. The main part of the restaurant where we were seated was separated from the bar by a wooden partition that ran the length of the room. I made my way out of the dining area, and then instead of turning down the hall to the bathroom, I took a left and slid onto a seat at the bar. I ordered a glass of red wine and drank it in about 2 minutes. Chugged it, really. I thought about doing it again after dinner, but I was afraid of being caught. So later that night, back at Michael's and sitting around his living room chatting with his parents, I found an excuse to go out to my car. Baked potato works too? Wow. What? You've never had a hangover? Cuervo and I were besties, tight as they come. That's when my mom had a talk with me about alcoholism that runs in our family. Oh, I didn't know that. Hey, hi, Artsy. Look at her avatar. That's so summery and cool. Now I drink casually, maybe twice a year, if that. I was always scared about being an alcoholic. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They say if both parents are alcoholics, right, that the child has an 80% chance um, of becoming one. I'm pretty sure my son is because he likes to do it in excess, but I don't allow it. Like on his birthday, he really, really wanted to go with his friend and have a couple. And they ended up having four because you can buy the great big ones now that equal out to be like four. And he said later on a little bit that evening here is, I mean, it wasn't, the room wasn't spinning, but he really felt a little dizzy and his body isn't used to it because he's barely touched it in almost 5 years. And, you know, I don't want his body to start craving it and mentally like thinking he has to have it or something. Um, but you know that self-medication thing, right? Hi, Barbara Smith. All right. Okay, where am I? Where was I? Oh, I'm up here. So I found an excuse to go out to my car. I think I told Michael's mom I had a book out there I wanted to lend her. In fact, I had a bottle of scotch stashed under the front seat. And when I got to the car, I grabbed it and I sat there in the dark and drank a good 2 or 3 inches of it straight out of the bottle. I just remembered the hunger, the need. That's why this is chapter 4 called Hunger. I need this. I might have actually said it aloud. I can't remember, but it wouldn't surprise me. It felt as strong as words. Most alcoholics I know experience that hunger long before they pick up the first drink, that yearning for something, something outside the self that will provide relief and solace and well being. You hear echoes of it all the time in AA meetings, that sense that there's a well of emptiness inside and that the trick in sobriety is to find new ways to fill it, spiritual ways instead of physical ones. People talk about their fixations with things, a new house they're looking to buy or a job they're desperate for or a relationship as though these things have genuinely transformative powers, powers to heal and save and change their lives. Searching. The need cuts across all backgrounds, all socioeconomic lines, all ages and sexes and races. Part of this, of course, is culturally determined, or at least culturally reinforced. The search for a fix, for a ready solution to what ails, has become a uniquely American undertaking, an ingrained part of consumer culture, as prevalent as the nearest diet workshop or plastic surgeon. In some ways, alcoholism is the perfect late 20th century expression of that particular brand of searching, an extreme expression of the way so many of us are taught to confront deep yearnings. Fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill up the emptiness, fill up what feels like a pit of loneliness and terror and rage. Please just take it away now. Hi, Barbara. It's called the Yard. It's a tap beer that's tall. Oh, okay. Um, our society has become marvelously adept at presenting easy or seemingly easy solutions to that impulse. All you have to do is watch enough TV and the answers come. One by one, the right body weight will do the trick. The right house, a couple of beers. I sometimes think of alcoholics as people who've elevated that search to an art form or a religion, filling the emptiness with drink, chasing drink after drink, sometimes killing themselves in the effort. They may give up liquor, but the chase is harder to stop. This is why you hear people in AA meetings talk about thinking or acting alcoholically long after they put down their last drink. The search for an external solution goes on. I want something. I need something. My husband is acting like an idiot. A woman said at a meeting not long ago, I have to remember that the solution is not get a new husband. This way of thinking is utterly familiar to me. When I was a kid, it was always something, some external fixation. I wanted a pair of patent leather party shoes. I wanted horseback riding lessons, and along with them, knee high riding boots and exactly the right kind of black velvet riding hat. I wanted the tallest Christmas tree in the lot. I obsessed about these things, railed about them, and when I couldn't have them, I felt misunderstood and bereft. This was a constant feeling. I can't remember a time when there wasn't something hanging out there, some spiritual carrot on a stick, promising comfort and relief. And it's important for me to remember that for years it was party shoes and riding boots. Later it would be alcohol. Same intent, same motivation, different substance. I still don't know today if that hunger originated within the family or if it was something I was simply born with. In the end, I don't suppose it matters. You get your comfort where you can. As soon as I could sit up in my mother's lap, I started rocking myself back and forth, and I did this for years. When I was a child, my parents had to put a mattress against the wall in my bedroom because I'd sit against the wall during nap time and rock back and forth, bang my head into it. Later, I developed a more elaborate system. I'd get on my knees and elbows and curl up in a ball on the bed, face down like a turtle in its shell, and rock away for hours sometimes. In pictures of me at age 5, 6, and 7, my hair is a matted mess, rings of knots framing my face. It got all tangled when I rocked on my head like that, and the tangles became so hopelessly knotted after a while that my mother gave up trying to comb them out. I looked like a tiny blonde Rastafarian. I can see the rocking now as a first addiction of sorts. It calmed me, took me out of myself, gave me a sense of relief. I don't know what I needed relief from at the time, age 5, age 6, but I clearly needed relief from something, and the rocking worked. I did it daily, sometimes several times a day. I also did it for a long, long time. Although when I got old enough to feel self-conscious about it, I kept it secret from everyone, my parents, my sister, my friends. I'd sometimes go up to my room and rock for an hour or so before dinner, closing the door, turning on the radio, climbing onto the bed, and rocking myself into a kind of alpha state. I almost always rocked that way before I went into sleep, rocking away for 30 minutes or an hour. I was deeply embarrassed that I did this, ashamed of it really, but I needed it. I needed it, and it worked. The truth, I did this until I was 16. The rocking was just like drinking. Mm. Okay, that was a quick chapter. So I'm going to start chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called In Vodka Veritas. What does veritas mean, Raider? In vodka veritas. I mean, I took 1 year of Spanish in high school, but I don't remember the word veritas. Is it drinks? In vodka veritas? Well, anyway. But drinking was so much more effective, its comfort so much more reliable. Over time, over many, many drinks, that knowledge is incorporated. The lessons folded into the soul. Liquor eases, liquor soothes and protects, a psychic balm. Did that set me on the road to alcoholism? I wouldn't have thought so as a teenager or a young adult, not from looking around me. Reading books, watching TV and movies, I made connections between drinking and camaraderie, drinking and machismo, drinking and sophistication. Simple images, the boys slugging down beer at the end of the workday, Nick and Nora clinking cocktail glasses in the thin man movies. I knew people got into trouble with liquor, but those cases seemed isolated and largely foreign, the result of circumstances that had little to do with me. Betty Ford, well, she was a president's wife. Imagine the stress of that. Celebrity addicts, Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli, Elizabeth Taylor, you name it. They crashed in direct response to the pressures of fame, their extraordinary careers and lifestyles. Who wouldn't? As for the rest of us, drinking looked entirely normal, and for the most part, entirely social. It was something that brought you out of yourself and into the world, into bars and parties and elegant restaurants. The idea that alcohol might play a more complicated internal role, that it might function on a much deeper emotional plane, was lost on me. Oh, it means truth. Okay, Raider. Once, though, I saw a hint, a tiny clue written in a single sentence in the back pages of a book called Getting Better by New York Times reporter Nan Robertson, a review copy of which arrived on my desk at work in 1988. The bulk of this book is about Alcoholics Anonymous, how it started, how it works, how it fits into current thinking about alcoholism. I flipped through it in my cubicle thinking, oh, AA, who cares? But then I started reading the final chapter called Nan's Story and came across a description of why she used to drink. She said she was a boring drunk. She never got weepy or maudlin, never threw up on people at parties, never made embarrassing scenes. Drunk at a party, she might wander off to the guest bedroom and pass out for an hour or so, a refreshing hour's nap as she saw it, and then return, wondering why the rest of the guests were looking at her strangely. She wrote, I withdrew in other more subtle ways. My husband used to say, when Nan gets bombed, she goes off into some little room in her mind and pulls down the shade. That line stuck with me for many years. It was quite unlike anything I'd ever read about drinking or drunks, quite contrary to the images of alcohol I'd encountered in the past, the manly and tough drinker, or the smooth and elegant drinker. She goes off into some little room in her mind and pulls down the shade. Without stating so explicitly, that image had to do with the places alcohol can take you. It had to do with transportation, with the very real, and to alcoholics, enormously seductive phenomenon of taking psychic flight, ingesting a simple substance, and leaving yourself behind. I read it over and over and over. Many of us drink in order to take that flight, in order to pour ourselves literally into new personalities, Uncap the bottle, pop the cork, slide into someone else's skin. A liquid makeover from the inside out. Everywhere we look, we were told that this is possible. The knowledge creeps inside us and settles in dark corners, places where fantasies lie. We see it on billboards and glossy magazine ads in movies and on TV. We see couples huddled together by fires, sipping brandy, flames reflecting in the gleam of glass snifters. We see elegant groups raising celebratory glasses of wine in restaurants. We see friendships cemented over bar stools and dark bottles of beer. We see secrets shared, problems solved, romances bloom. We watch, we know, and together the wine, beer, and liquor industries spend more than $1 billion each year reinforcing this knowledge. Drinking will transform us. And it does, at least for a little while. It melts down the piece of us that hurt or feel distress. It makes room for some other self to emerge, a version that's new and improved and decidedly less conflicted. And after a while, it becomes central to the development of that version, as integral to forward motion as the accelerator on a car. Without the drink, you are version A. With the drink, version B. And you can't get from A to B without the right equipment. A man I know named Alex describes himself as a gregarious introvert. He can't stand being alone, can't stand sitting quietly with his own thoughts, and yet he is terribly shy. So when he discovered drink in high school, he thought, the elixir. He could talk to anyone after a beer or two or three. The deep thing inside that made him grimace and squirm, the part that felt like a dry, steady itch of discomfort just washed away. His whole being seemed to fall into place. Hi, Sherry. When Alex describes this in an AA meeting, the whole room nods. Right, absolutely. It's the equation we all lived by, every single alcoholic I know. Discomfort plus drink equals no discomfort. The mathematics of self-transformation. It turned me into someone I liked. A woman named Louise said that at a meeting during my first month's sobriety. She was teary when she spoke, a trace of grief in her voice, as though she was reduced to nothing without that special math, unlikable to herself and others. She said, all this shit I feel, when I drank, it just went away. For a long time when it's working, the drink feels like a path to a kind of self-enlightenment, something that turns us into the person we wish to be, or the person we think we really are. In some ways, the dynamic is this simple: alcohol makes everything better until it makes everything worse. And when drinking makes things better, it does so with such easy perfection, lifting you, shifting you, just like that, into another self. I can trace that feeling back to early adolescence, age 14, age 15. I was that age the first time I took a sip from one of my father's martinis, and I felt the gin on my tongue, simultaneously cold and warming, the slightest tinge of citrus from the single spare twist of lemon. I was that age, 14, the first time I drank beer at a bar, the first time I heard the waitress setting down a pitcher on a hard linoleum table. Thunk. Then watched her pour the amber liquid into tall frosted glasses, then felt that glass in my hand, solid and cool and reassuring as a kind of currency. I suppose that marked the start of what would become a cumulative process, a Pavlovian phenomenon of persistent reinforcement. This feels good. The way this glass of white wine flows from bottle to glass to throat to brain, the way it tingles and warms and lightens. This feels good. The way a group of us gather around a table, elbow to elbow, united in the camaraderie of drink and laughter and reward. Later, the sensations would grow more specific. This feels good. This snifter of cognac warming in the palm, and this flute of champagne, cool and delicate to the touch as mother of a pearl, and this tumbler of gin, clear and icy and laced with lime. It feels like me. It feels right. This is such a common sensation to a drinker. My friend Meg says she felt like the real her was trapped somewhere inside, locked up in a cage beneath her ribs. When she drank, that version was freed. For years, she says, it felt like the road to truth. She smiles and adds, in vodka veritas. Yeah, so you're right. It must mean truth. Because she just said, right? It felt like the road to truth in vodka veritas. So you were right, Raider. About a year after I quit drinking, I heard some tinkly cocktail music on the radio in my car, part of the background of a commentary on National Public Radio. It sounded like the kind of music you'd hear in a fancy piano bar, and I flashed for an instant onto a period in my 20s when I used to spend a lot of time drinking at the bar at the Ritz Hotel in Boston with my friend Sam. Sam was great to drink with because he had a huge tolerance for alcohol but didn't drink alcoholically. He could match you drink for drink, and he'd never say no if you wanted to stick around for one more, or two, or three more. But he'd never get too drunk. You could always count on Sam to be sane enough at the end of the night to figure out the tip or get you home. He was also great to drink with because he was always late. That meant when we'd meet in the bar after work, I'd get to sit there for at least a glass or two before he arrived. I'd sip the wine and I'd feel the tension ease and drain away, and I'd begin to feel elegant and calm and enveloped a, a pretty young woman waiting at a table by the window, picking cashews out of the nut dish and waiting for her date. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Waitressing is what I did for 20 years at quite a few different places. And we always partied, like on weekends or during the week at the pizza joints I worked at and even nicer restaurants. It was, getting off and heading to the bar. I just blew all my tips there. Hi, Nina T. Hi there. Thanks, everybody. Will you guys hit the like for me? When we drank together, my sense of time would shift. Sam would get there, and there'd be a slightly self conscious 20 minutes or half an hour until we eased our way into the drinks and conversation. This is a story for people that don't know, like maybe Nina T and stuff, called Drinking, a love story. It's a New York Times bestseller written in 1996 that I did read about 10 years ago. And when New Year's came around, and again, I went through another year without drinking and all that. I just thought this book could resonate with some people and could maybe even help someone out there realize maybe they have a problem, or maybe they want to stop, but they don't really think they have a problem or whatever. And so it's a true story, but the names, of course, are changed. And I'm on chapter 4, Hunger. When we drank together, my sense of time would shift. Sam would get there, and there'd be a slightly self-conscious 20 minutes or half an hour until we'd eased our way into the drinks and conversation. And the next thing you knew, it would be 2 or 3 hours later, and we'd be in the middle of some deep talk about family or therapy or work, and I'd feel right there, genuinely united, as though we'd really spoken to or heard one another. I loved those moments, that sense that the world had boiled down to such simple elements, me and Sam and the 2 glasses on the table. Everything else, the clink of waiters clearing tables, the low buzz of talk from others around us, just background music. Drinking was the best way I knew, the fastest and simplest to let my feelings out and to connect, just sit there and connect with another human being. The comfort was enormous. I was an easier, stronger version of myself, as though I'd been coated from the inside out with a warm liquid armor. It's true. It's a statement of fact that alcohol was key to that feeling. I'd learned that years earlier, watching my father mix his secret potion in martini pitchers and in places like the Ritz. I learned to tap into the same mystery myself, pouring myself over bars, pouring my emotions over people, pouring out all the stuff I kept bottled up. The amazing thing was how effective the drink was, how easily you could uncork a sense of well being, how magical it was. Magical. You could open a bottle and build yourself a liquid bridge. That may be one of liquor's most profound and universal appeals to the alcoholic, the way it generates a sense of connection to others, the way it numbs social anxiety and dilutes feelings of isolation, gives you a sense of access to the world. You're trapped in your own skin and thoughts. You drink, you are released, just like that. One drink in the bridge, so elusive in the cold, nerve-jangled sensitivity of sobriety, appears, waiting only to be crossed. In many ways, alcoholism has the feel of a psychological safety net, something a drinker constructs over a period of many years by making connections between feelings, like an emotional game of connect the dots. Take a difficult, sober feeling, shyness, fear, and connect it to its easier, drunken counterpart, disinhibition, courage. The net gets woven beneath you, a tight set of strings that promises to cushion you when you fall against a hard emotion. That's exactly what happened when I drank with Sam. Dot A, tension. Dot B, relief. In my head, out of my head, disconnected, connected. There were so many transformations like that, so many strings in the net, self-consciousness to less self-consciousness, inhibition to ease. I was painfully shy as a kid, shyer than my twin sister, and I had behind her for many years, allowing her to speak for both of us when visitors bent over us and cooed questions. How old are you girls? What grade are you in? When I couldn't hide behind her any longer, when we began the process of separation that twins inevitably undergo, I turned to drink. There it was in high school. There it was at parties and in the back seats of boys' cars. When the feeling of shyness washed away my voice, there it was, the liquid solution. And there I was beside it, ready to reach for another one. Connect the dots, shy to less shy. Hi, Freeside. Growing up, I had an unsafe feeling. Because my parents weren't cuddly types, I didn't have access to comforting nooks, like laps, when we visited places where I felt scared. I remember being with my mother's family one Sunday and sitting at the table after dinner with the grown-ups. My grandparents lived in a big formal house with crystal chandeliers and an honest-to-goodness powder room that actually smelled like powder, and a grand staircase that spiraled upstairs from the front hall. I was 6 or so, sitting silently as the adults talked, eating an Eskimo pie. My Uncle Joel caught my eye and said, "What are you doing over there?" Everybody looked at me, and I felt like I'd been caught, doing something wrong, and I blushed. There was a great silence. Joel finally said, "I guess she's looking for the Eskimo who made that pie." And I felt so exposed, I wanted to jump into my mother's lap and hide my head, but I couldn't. That unsafe feeling would stick with me for years, settling deep in my bones, but alcohol drove it out, replaced it with a feeling of courage. Drinking wine at age 19, age 20, age 25, I could sit at Sunday dinner with my mother's family and simply not care about who is watching me across the table, not care what they thought, not feel so tiny and vulnerable. Drinking wine, I could be the person I thought I was supposed to be, a more grown-up person who could appreciate the nuances of a fine Merlot and comment on how beautifully it went with the roast. I could fit in. And when I sat there at the table with my aunts, my uncles, and parents, when I lifted the glass to my lips and watched the people around me swirl the liquid in their glasses, it felt right. I felt as though I made the right transition, and that gave me a feeling of relief. Fear plus drink equals bravery. There you go. Drinking always worked that way, at least it did until the end. There was a logic to it, an easy liquid logic that resolved some deep puzzle of need and wanting. Ah, that's how it feels. Ah, here it is. I found the way. Tennessee Williams describes his feeling in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. When Big Daddy asked Brick why he drinks, his answer, "I do it for the click." Click, it's right, it's me. To a drinker, the sensation is real and pure and akin to something spiritual you seek. In the bottle, you find. Once, when I was about 13, I dropped a bottle of milk on the floor before dinner and it crashed, shards of glass and pools of milk all over the linoleum. My father, sitting in the dining room, glared at me after I cleaned it up. That was hostile, he said. He told me I was expressing hostility toward my mother. He told me Freud always said there was no such thing as an accident. Her father was this psychoanalyst, very, would try to get into her feelings deep and that kind of thing when she was younger. She couldn't hardly bear the silence when they were in the car together because she felt like he could read her mind and it just made her uncomfortable, and she loved her father, though, deeply and revered him and everything. But, okay, where am I? Okay. For years, I trotted out that anecdote every time I wanted to explain the perils of growing up in a household headed by a Freudian analyst. Trouble. I'd laugh, rolling my eyes. I knew from that day forward that having a shrink for a father was going to be trouble. In fact, I knew no such thing. My parents were intensely private people with a profound respect for what went on below the surface. And I didn't question their analytic orientation until I was well into my 20s. My mother once suggested that I make a list of all the things I hated about my parents, all the things that made my blood boil. I must have been about 10 at the time, and I remember standing there in her bedroom, blinking. Hated? About my parents? I never made the list, and it took me years to understand why the suggestion made me so deeply uncomfortable. If I hated things about them, did it mean they hated things about me? Drinking, in a general sense, gave me a way to rewrite such pieces of history, a way to address whatever lingering confusion I had about the person I'd been brought up to be. Again, simple math. I grew up in a confusing home, and the drink made the confusion go away. It provided the easiest way out, an escape from my internal life. The first time I told my friend Elaine that my father, was an analyst, she burst out laughing. We were at a bar with another friend, James. We were all a little drunk, and they both just shrieked with laughter. Oh my God, James said. Did he analyze you? Oh, sort of, I said. They were fascinated and amused by this, so I continued and told them the story about dropping the milk bottle, my early hostile gesture. James kind of squealed with glee, which pleased me. I was shy, and James and Elaine both seemed much more worldly and sophisticated, and I liked being able to make them laugh. So I told them more stories. I told them about a time when I was 12 and became morbidly depressed because our au pair had left and moved back to Denmark. I moped around the house for days and cried at night in my room, and my parents finally sent me to a shrink. James and Elaine howled at this. Oh my God, Elaine said, depressed over the au pair? How Cambridge can you get? I rolled my eyes and said, incredible, huh? I laughed with them. Ha ha, let's have another drink. In fact, those were rather sad stories, painful reminders of the way I'd been taught to externalize feelings like sadness and rage. Take them to a psychiatrist, write them down on a pad. But sitting there drunk, I felt none of that. Instead, I had a sense of something that felt new and exciting, something like rebellion, as though the door to a new version of me, a non-intellectual, non-analytical version, was opening before me. The path, the liquid equation. I remember looking down at my drink and thinking about Elaine and James, about how different they were from the people I'd grown up around. Elaine and James didn't analyze their emotions or engage in serious dialogues about hostility or anger. They drank, and when they drank, whatever feelings bubbled and roiled beneath the surface just spilled out of them, spilled out and onto the table where you could see them. I liked that. I liked belonging to crowds of people who dealt with emotion the same way, who simply spewed like that, who harbored a certain disdain for insight and analytic thinking. I liked being able to laugh with them, to sit on bar stools and let my own emotions spill out the very same way, the sense of disinhibited high amusement. And I liked the way the drink helped turn me into that kind of person, someone more hardened and rebellious and cynical than the person I was raised to be, someone who could scoff and tell stories and make other people laugh. It was something I'd been looking for all my life. Certainly, I'd been looking for it since adolescence, a way out, a style that felt less constricted and cerebral than the one I grew up with. As a teenager, I had a sense that appetites were to be reined in, kept in check. When my sister and I started bringing boyfriends over for dinner, we became aware that there was never enough food at the table. There was no financial reason for this, but it wasn't something we questioned. Dinner was simply served the same way every night, and even when we had company, the family seemed to adhere to some unspoken rule about portion control. My mother would stack the plates in front of my father, and he'd put a dollop of food on each one, and the boyfriends would sort of blink down at the plate as if to say, "That's all?" A chicken breast, a tiny dollop of rice, a piece of fish, a pile of green beans, so small you could count them. I learned the acronym FHB from an early age. It stood for Family Hold Back, and it was the rule we employed when we had company for dinner. There might not be enough to go around, so my mother would set the food on the table and whisper to us or mouth the letters FHB. Hi, Sub-Zero Flames. Hi there. Drinking released me from the compulsion to hold back. Okay, I'm really close to the chapter ending. Gave freer rein to appetites. In high school, one of my favorite books was Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. And one of my favorite characters was Mrs. Ramsay, the mother, who had an almost mystical ability to gather her flock of children and house guests at the dinner table and unite them. Awareness of the self would lift in her presence, rising like a dense fog, and the odd collection of characters around her would seem to meld and fuse, their sense of time and separateness yielding to a feeling of utter belonging. Woolf's descriptions of that phenomenon seemed to resonate deep in my bones, tapping something unfamiliar and desperately coveted. I wanted that feeling, and I couldn't seem to generate it on my own. And the amazing thing, the truly amazing and seductive thing, was that the drink could generate some version of it for me, a most convincing replica of ease and connection and relief, at least for a little while. And there it was again, the connection. Repression plus drink equals openness. At heart, alcoholism feels like the accumulation of dozens of such connections, dozens of tiny fears and hungers and rages, dozens of experiences and memories that collect in the bottom of your soul, coalescing over many, many, many drinks into a single liquid solution. Of course, the problem with self-transformation is that after a while, you don't know which version of yourself to believe in, which one is true. I was the hardened, cynical version of me when I was with James and Elaine. I was the connected, intimate version of me when I was with Sam. And I was the genteel, sophisticated version of me when I was with my relatives. And honestly, after a while, I didn't know which was which, where one began or ended, whether the versions existed authentically within me, or whether they needed outside people and circumstances to kick them into gear. For years, hi Maria. Aw, thank you. Thanks for hopping in, hon. For years, my therapist, say hi to Charlene, okay? From me. For years, my therapist said to me, sit with the feelings. What happens when you just sit still by yourself? What happens when you just sit with the feelings? I suppose he was trying to get at those very questions. What kind of person was I, really? What was I afraid of, angry about? Who was I when I didn't have other people to cue into? I couldn't answer, of course, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit still for 10 minutes without a drink, without the anesthesia. I really couldn't. Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, I've been on sertraline for years, since Parker was 4. Yeah, and it changed my life, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I may not seem like it, crying at the drop of a pin and stuff, but like things that should really rile me up, I'm just like, I mean, they don't fester, and they can kind of roll off my shoulder. And I take 100 for a good 14 years or so. I took 50, but yeah, sertraline is Zoloft. Yeah, it's one of the most mild ones. Some people can gain weight on it. I never did, and many people don't. So, yeah. Okay. One of the first things you hear in AA, one of the first things that makes core gut level sense is that in some deep and important personal respects, you stop growing when you start drinking alcoholically. The drink stunts you, prevents you from walking through the kinds of fearful life experiences that bring you from point A to point B on the maturity scale. When you drink in order to transform yourself, when you drink and become someone you're not, when you do this over and over and over, your relationship to the world becomes muddied and unclear. You lose your bearings. The ground underneath you begins to feel shaky. After a while, you don't know even the most basic things about yourself, what you're afraid of, what feels good and bad, what you need in order to feel comforted and calm, because you've never given yourself a chance, a clear, sober chance to find out. Alcohol offers protection from all of that, protection from the pain of self-discovery, a wonderful cocooning protection that enormously insidious because it's utterly false, but it feels so real and necessary. And then tragically, the protection stops working. The mathematics of transformation change. This is inevitable. You drink long and hard enough, and your life gets messy. Your relationships with non drinkers, with yourself, become strained. Your work suffers, you run into financial trouble or legal trouble or trouble with the police. Rack up enough pain, and the old math: discomfort plus drink equals no discomfort ceases to suffice. Feeling comfortable isn't good enough anymore. You're after something deeper than a respite from shyness or a break from private fears and anger. So after a while, you alter the equation, make it stronger and more complete. Pain plus drink equals self obliteration. Wow. Okay, so I read chapter 4 and 5, and the next chapter is sex. And now I pretty much am almost in the middle. So I'm going to go now because I have like 55 more minutes of StreamYard to read the next chapter to, and then I will be on my glitchy YouTube studio where it glitches out like every 2 seconds. You can follow, you can understand, only because I've looked back at my videos over there, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know why it does that. But, and actually, I think probably this time I might just go ahead and spend the, what is it, 45 or $50, so I don't have to wait, because I don't get more StreamYard until the 28th. And today's only the 15th. It's over 10 days. So I really might do that because the sound is better. Hopefully it's been good this whole time. It hasn't been glitchy or warbling or whatever. But thanks everyone for being here. I know a lot of people in my life, and you can't always tell who will succumb to the ills of alcoholism. It's not always people who have an addictive personality, Tina. It's crazy out there. Yeah. I mean, I remember from age 16, because the drinking age was 18 in the 80s, at least on the East Coast in Vermont, where I went to high school. And I always had to drink to get drunk. I mean, why else would you drink, really, if you're young? I mean, you're trying to catch a buzz and you end up getting drunk or whatever. And so it was always standing around the keg with the guys. It wasn't taking a beer and go sitting on the grass somewhere. I had to be right there. That was the feeling I had. So I can really relate to this book. And it's amazing the things you can really learn about alcoholism in AA. I haven't gone now in I think it's been a couple of months. Um, but I went to a lot of meetings all over the place, even in different counties, birthdays and picnics and dinners and speeches, and I heard and saw so much that they say if you pick up even years and years later, you're right back to your amount of drinking where you were before. So like for me, I mean, I'm certain the first time if I were to ever drink again, I wouldn't get sloshed because I would allow myself to stop. I'd have like maybe two. But what I know about me is, what about at that barbecue, right, someday, and I'm in the hot sun or whatever, or I go to someone's wedding reception, right, and I'm kind of nervous or feeling out of place, and even when I tried to drink slow, like I did in the beginning, like other people, but for me, I'd catch that buzz and then it was just like constant probably. And then the sips were bigger. And then I'm smoking too, right? I had to have that cigarette. And I was never really even a smoker. But when I drank, I absolutely had to. Um, yeah, one drink turns to many. So I found out in my outpatient that I had to go to for almost a year, twice a week, that I was a periodic drinker. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So, you know, I could try to fool myself and go, well, you've had a six pack down in your fridge for 2 weeks and haven't touched it. And gee, you haven't drank in 13 years. You're not going to have any problem now. But I know deep in my soul and from all that I've learned, I would. It'd just be a matter of time, and I don't want my guard to get down so much that, if I was like, again, at a barbecue and there was kind of a cute guy talking to me and I was having drinks and he said, "I'll come to my car. Let's go look at this part of the park." I'd probably go because I'd be so relaxed and trusting and my inhibitions would be down. Do you know what I mean? And so it's dangerous. It's just, and now, as you guys all know, your drinks can get roofied, even if you're a guy. It can happen. And it happened to me. Downtown Johnny's here in this darn town. And I had never heard of it. I'd never heard of those date rape drugs and everything. But when I started seeing programs and learning about, true crime and learning things 4 years after it happened, I was like, oh my God, those were all the symptoms I had. I knew I didn't drink very much. I had 2 drafts at the bar and 1 sip of a drink that completely knocked me out. My head was hitting the bricks, you guys. I couldn't hold my head up. So I felt drunk, but I couldn't understand it. And then boom, I hit the pavement. And the next thing I know, I was in the hospital. But then I was thinking back, why were these African American younger guys so quiet. Like they weren't even like, hey, what's your name? Or you're a shitty pool player, or you're a good pool player. They were just silent. Like they were waiting for me to something to happen. I mean, I'm just not even kidding. I was 42 or so. Wait, no, yeah, yeah, I was, because I quit drinking when I was like 48. I was around 42 years old. And these guys were like 21 or 20. And I just wanted to play some pool, and they offered to buy me a drink. And, I said, oh, okay, and asked me what I wanted. I said vodka cranberry. I thought I would sip on that slower than downing a beer. And I do remember seeing this much vodka in the glass, which alarmed me, and this much cranberry, you know. But yeah, that was a really scary time. There's no doubt in my mind that drink wasn't laced with something. No doubt. And it's happened to many, many people. I've seen in other chats when I've brought this up and everything. Okay, so I'm really going to go now. And oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to read today's Jesus Calling from Sarah Young, because we can all use a little more higher power in our life, I think, and, prayers and blessings and whatever can happen with all those people in California. Last I knew, the Palisades fire was 18% contained. Okay, I'm not understanding this. I'm not understanding this with so many firefighters. But what I'm learning is contained means the perimeter. The perimeter. I'm thinking, why can't all these firemen from all these states, right, get in there and get the fire out so it'll just stop? Apparently they can't because of these winds. Yeah, well, thanks, Sub-Zero Flames. I mean, it wasn't even just saying no. I mean, let's be real. My neighbor called the police on me. I found this out 4 days later, that it was Danette. And it's good she did, because I was in a blackout. I was talking and I was at the playground, but I don't remember. My daughter was crying and all upset, and I wasn't paying attention. And she was 7. I mean, and then the next thing I know, it was getting dusky, like around 7ish. And I remember cops walking up to me in the parking lot, right? Which end? Right out here, right out there. And they said, we have your daughter. She's coming with us, this kind of deal. And I need to go up with you, and you need to give me some of her clothes. And I wasn't even screaming, freaking out. It's like I knew the jig was up. And I didn't even go out very much. That's the thing. I didn't go out every weekend. I just didn't. I was happy, sort of, with her dad, and yeah, I was having like a pity party feeling that day, and drank. I had a beer here. I had 2 beers here, and I was on my third, and I put it in one of those things with a lid, and I was walking up to her school. I don't drive, right? So I'm justifying it. I'm not drunk. I'm on my 3rd beer, so I'm feeling talkative and good. But then once I hit that 3rd beer, I wanted to keep drinking. And I knew my daughter liked to hang out with Lily, so she was taken care of. But I was in such a gosh darn stupor at the skate park that Danette and her husband came up. They walked up to me, took the beer out of my hand, dumped it right in front of me. I don't remember any of this, and said, "You're coming with us." And I think I said no or something. And I almost fell into the skateboard bowl. I had sandals on and a little bit high heeled, and I was teetering on the edge of the cement It's just awful, you guys. And then apparently, when they were giving me a ride home, I tried to jump out of the car, you guys. I'm not kidding, at a whole bunch of lights. I don't remember this, I swear. She told me these things, and I went, what? Are you kidding? Yeah. And then sometime also before all this happened, I was hitchhiking in the middle of the road, right out here in the middle. And a big pickup was barreling down the hill. And my neighbor saw me and was at the pool area and the hot tub thing. And she jumped out, wrapped her towel around her, and she grabbed me out of the middle of the road. And we were in the ditch and getting kind of dirty and all this stuff. And I mean, that's for me, when I was in my 20s, my blackouts were far and few between. I could drink like a fish, mix all kinds of things. And there were times when I'd be in and out a little bit, like you go to a party after. I mean, you remember most of it, but maybe not some of the ride home or going to another. I mean, there were a few lapses, not long amounts of time or anything. But for me, this blackout was profound. And this is what I share at AA a lot. It was really bad. And that's the progressiveness of the disease. So because of CPS, right, Sub-Zero, taking my daughter, and then I had to get a lawyer, and her father and I were broke up when she was 5, and he moved to Colorado with his new girlfriend and had 2 little girls, like 2 and 3 by then, and he was trying to get Shaylin from me, all the way to Colorado. I mean, I'm telling you right now, it's a fucking nightmare. Scariest thing I've ever been through. And I said this one night on a live, if we had gone to trial, because I got, I don't know if I got charged, because it's not out there on my thing anywhere. I've looked, but my thing was neglect. Okay, it wasn't abuse, but again, neglect is sort of abuse, isn't it? I mean, think about it, if you're in such a blackout. But yeah, so all he had to do was parenting classes, and he didn't do them. And I'm so darn glad he didn't bother, this and that and the other thing. But, setting your alarm, checking for the color. Do you have to go pee in a cup? If you have too much urine in the thing, it's considered a positive for them, but yet you have to do enough. So there were all these worries, and you can't have poppy seeds, and I didn't really eat muffins and donuts and all that stuff that much back then. But, and there was one time when I couldn't get enough urine in the cup, and I was hysterical at the place. I was like, oh my God, no, I don't want a positive, because that would put back the time of me getting her back. So they called my social worker, and she was like, just relax, just drink a little more water and try again. And she arrived, and she was really nice. And they saw in pretty quick time how darn serious I was, because I had, thank God, no priors. I'm not a drug user. I'm not, I've never even had a ticket, you guys. I've had nothing. So because of that, my lawyer said, sign her over to the state. Sign her over. She said, I know it's scary, but you'll get her back in a month. No, it took 3 months. And that's just because of the, everything was 2 weeks. 2 weeks to wait for a darn phone call. 2 weeks for court to happen. 2 weeks for the guardian ad litem to show. 2 more weeks for the guardian ad litem to be at the court, 2 more weeks they tried to talk me into doing family court. But I found out that I would have had to pee in that thing or something every single day. And I was like, I'm not even like doing anything wrong. They're all, negatives. I'm not going to subject myself to this. I'm not I'm not sticking needles in my arms. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not. But I remember they were relentless, calling me on the phone. Well, we really suggest and then I started calling my lawyer so much. She had to get someone to answer my calls. And I talked to my mom about it and I was crying and everything. And she said, Megan, you have got to stop micromanaging. And she was firm. But that was my dehumility de what is it called? Dehumiliation or humiliation, demoralizing moment when I had to tell my mom why I didn't have my daughter anymore. It was horrible, horrible. And then I was worried she'd have abandonment issues maybe later on. And I'll just say this really quickly. I was allowed to see her 1 hour a week, 1 effing hour in 1 week. That's like nothing. It's nothing. And I couldn't show any emotion. Like, I see how I get a tad choked up just talking to you guys about this. I would get out of there. She would walk hand in hand, my little daughter with her green eyes and freckles and her long curls, sweetest little thing in the world. She'd be like, bye, Mom. And she seemed fine. But I found out all these years later, she cried every night. She cried every night. She even thought I was dead because she wasn't going back with me. She thought I had died. And then the foster mother lady said I could talk to her on the phone. And then they decided against it. But they had been doing this family, because I'm still friends with them. We're really close. They're a wonderful family for 10 years. And they went through where the mother would make promises. Oh, I'm never going to do drugs again. And then would. Do you know what I mean? And so they didn't want Shaylin to be hurt. So it was intense. I, to this day, have her picture of when she's young and the whole little notebook thing of what I went through to get her back. Yeah, it was really something. But I got her back before Christmas. It was wonderful. And I was so happy. I went and got those butterfly glittery cards that you buy, thank you cards. And I gave one to the judge, one to the guardian ad litem, who I didn't particularly care for. She kept trying to say I didn't have a bond with my daughter, but yet I had calendars, thank God, full of stuff that we did, places we went, and little excursions, and just these buildings you could go to do arts and crafts, and the children's museum, and all these things we did. And they still try to tell you, well, we don't think you have a bond with your daughter. It was just, they dissect you like there's no tomorrow. So anyway, I had to suffer and go through hell to stay sober. I had to do it. I'm still sober today. I don't plan on drinking ever, but it's one day at a time. What's really nice for me is I've gotten enough meetings in and I've met enough people, and it's so nice not to wake up with a headache and feel like crap. Especially when you're older like me, 62, and you can wake up feeling like crap. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a little headache if I don't have my coffee. My neck has arthritis in it now. I can't imagine having a hangover and being older, waking up feeling like shit. But what's nice is the desire is gone. Like, it's so nice. It's freeing. It's a freedom. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on and on, but I saw Sub-Zero's thing where she thought maybe I just stopped on my own. I did that for 8 years when my son was born, because Joe and I drank all the time. I mean, not every night or anything, but every weekend at the house or maybe with friends. And when I got pregnant, I stopped. And then for 8 years, um, until I met Shaylin's dad. Then I went ahead and had a Mike's Hard Lemonade. knowing I probably shouldn't, but I did. But did I drink every day? No, no. I had a daughter. I was busy, but it was my escape. It was my escape when he would insult my dinner, or whatever, find fault with, he was hypercritical. He wasn't critical, he was hypercritical, and had bipolar. We didn't even know for 2 years. And I was in that relationship for 8 years. But it's been almost an hour and a half. Okay, so today's January. Why am I over here in February? January 15th. And yeah. So I read 14th before I read the story, some of the story. And this is today's, and I know it's like, for many of you, it's already the 16th, isn't it? It's 11:30 here in Washington. So my face is shining upon you, beaming out peace that transcends understanding. You are surrounded by a sea of problems, but you are face to face with me, your peace. As long as you focus on me, you are safe. If you gaze too long at the myriad of problems around you, you will sink under the weight of your burdens. When you start to sink, simply call out, "Help me, Jesus," and I will lift you up. The closer you live to me, the safer you are. Circumstances around you are undulating, right? Undulating. And there are treacherous looking waves in the distance. Fix your eyes on me, the one who never changes. By the time those waves reach you, they will have shrunk to proportions of my design. I am always beside you, helping you face today's waves. The future is a phantom, seeking to spook you. Laugh at the future. Stay close to me. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, no, Sub-Zero Flames. No. No. I want to make a difference up here. You guys notice I don't put my Cash App and PayPal up. There's nothing wrong with other people that do, and I used to, but because I got my trust fund consolidated and I have a little nest egg, which is slowly dwindling, surely every month, but I just want to entertain. I want to kind of be a teachable resource, if that makes any sense. I want to have a place where people can go and feel safe in my chat. People don't get blocked over here. I will block if things are really out of control, or someone constantly spams or, tries to spell out the word NIGGAR or something crazy like that. That's happened. But even the mods in here, it's not that way. And I thought, Sub-Zero Flames, I made you a mod. Wait, what am I doing? Okay, I'll have to go into my community and make you one. I thought I did that. Because I make most people a mod, and that's so too you can protect yourself, but remember, you can always hit the 3 dots if anyone ever tries to do anything. And people are going around cloning. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Leanie's been cloned, and Lulu's been cloned, and people, I think it was Lulu was cloned, or Lizzo, as a mod. Like, it's crazy. You would think YouTube could be able to fix that kind of problem at least. But yeah, so please hit the like. Please subscribe to me if you're willing to. And thanks for being here, you guys. Love you guys very much. Stay safe, and I should see you tomorrow with, see, I forgot the name of the chapter. Oh, sex. Interesting. Okay. All right. Bye for now. Prayers to all those Californians. Bye bye.